Hello, my name is Shayna Leibowitz. I'm the Youth Engagement Specialist here at Temple Israel, and I had the privilege of working with the 2026 Adult B'nei Mitzvah class. For this week's episode of You've Always Belonged Here, we're sharing excerpts from our Adult B'nei Mitzvah service on May 8th, 2026. Mazel Tov to Diana Blau, Kate Jonas, Michael J. Miller, Randi Mondshine, Barbara J. Roffe, Hazel Malbin Shulman, Jeremy Swetzoff, Bernie Vagnini, and Susan Sanders Witkow.
At 77, I am ready to stand on this bema and say, Hineni, I am here. I am here is to claim presence in a different way. It is to step forward, not just to attend, but to be seen, not just to participate, but to take ownership. It is to recognize that my voice matters, that my presence is important, and that I have a role to play. I can think of no more important moment in my Jewish life than right now to say I am here. At a time when anti-Semitism is ever present and growing, when the need to advocate for tolerance and to pursue justice feels urgent, I feel called on to stand more visibly and more intentionally as a Jew. To speak, to support, to show up, not just as part of a community, but as an individual within it. To be both visible and vigilant. To say Hineni today is to say, I am in the right place at just the right time. To say, I am ready, Hineni, here I am.
Why now? The real question is why not sooner? All my life, I've heard a still, small voice asking me to go deeper and to name what I am and where I came from. As a child, I was raised in a humanistic, Unitarian world where differences were celebrated. God and Judaism stayed at the edges. My parents tried to protect us from being othered, but our family history carried that fear. My father escaped Germany in 1937, and my grandparents rebuilt their lives learning that visibility could be dangerous. Still, the voice persisted. Friends invited me to their churches, but it was the Jewish community that quietly fed. Later, I built a Jewish family on purpose. Watching my father's face glow at my daughter's bat mitzvah right here at Temple Israel, I saw healing across generations. In 2018, I began a new chapter, and I listened again. First on the agenda was visiting synagogues across New York City, where I found peace and wholeness. Today, I proudly stand before my children and my grandchildren and say out loud, this is who we are, this is our heritage, Lador Vador.
Growing up in a traditional Jewish household in the mid-20th century, bat mitzvah was not a path that existed for girls in my community. I received a good Jewish education, but there was an invisible boundary. People ask me, why now? The honest answer is because now I can, and because I may not always be able to. Age has a way of clarifying what matters. I've always longed for something that would bring me closer to my faith, my community, and myself, and the time is not someday, the time is now. I think of my mother and my grandmother, women of deep Jewish faith who never once stood at a bema. I like to believe that somewhere they are cheering for me now. Shehekianu, v'kiyamanu, v'higianu, lazman hazeh. I am, at long last, a bat mitzvah, 60 years late, but right on time.
When I was given the opportunity to join an adult cohort and become a B'nei Mitzvah, I saw it as a challenge to face my discomfort and learn what I did not know. Along with many things, I learned that Judaism is a religion of gratitude. It is important to focus on the haves, not the have-nots. a glass half full view of my universe. And to me, that is what religion should be, a sense of hope and appreciation of living life to the fullest. It's why we have persevered through so much hate. We had and have no other choice but to stand tall and be grateful for being Jewish and frankly still being here. Religion is about how you live, not just what rituals you perform. We pray to help us go do the work. It is a partnership, an action. And I am so happy I took action to become a B'nai Mitzvah today.
When I was growing up, I knew nothing of my family or their past. They were just Jewish. I did not know much about Judaism, my Judaism, until I was a teenager. I learned that a lot of my family ended up in the Holocaust, and once my family was liberated, some of them came to the United States. The deep-seated fear in my great-grandparents made it that they no longer wanted to be Jewish, but American. It was safer to be American. My family was living in a world of uncertainty of being Jewish, but I stand here today claiming it back for my family. The phrase Lador Vador means from generation to generation, and that is what I intend to do. I will carry my Jewishness with pride as I become a child of the commandments, just like many generations before me. I am bringing the light of Judaism back to the central focus of my familial lineage. I feel myself closing the gap that was skipped for 2 generations.
Our Torah portion is Bahar Baruchutai, a passage I had not encountered before. Bahar speaks of the sabbatical year, the commandment to let the land rest, to release debts, to restore what has been lost. The Jubilee year at its center is a concept that seems like a radical vision today. A society that periodically resets itself, that refuses to let inequity calcify, that insists the world as it is need not be the world as it must remain. Be'kukotai then lays out the covenant, the responsibilities we accept, and the consequences of turning away from them. Together, these portions ask us what we owe to one another and to the world around us. This understanding that Judaism is not a transactional system of divine favor earned and lost, but rather a guide on how to live with the world around us, is the insight that has resonated most deeply with me throughout this process. Tikkun Olam, the repair of the world, is not a concept confined to moments of crisis or to the high holidays. It is a daily orientation, a way of asking what we owe and how we are living up to it.
This week's portion is about sabbatical years, how the land belongs to Adonai, and how every 7 years we must rest the land. The process of resting the land, or at least crop rotation, has been practiced for thousands of years. And while most of us are not farmers, the concept of sabbatical and taking a break every few years is deeply ingrained. In many ways, it reminds me of Ecclesiastes 3. To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under heaven. And after a long wait, this is a season for me to become bar mitzvah, as late as that may seem. One thing that stands out to me about this week's portion is that it does not only apply to each of us individually, but to the Jewish community as a whole. And that reminds me that I've been blessed to be part of the Jewish community, and indeed several Jewish communities that have nourished me throughout my life, my family, my friends, and my Temple Israel community.
As I embarked upon this B'nai Mitzvah journey, the notion of cycles really resonated with me. Around 30 years ago, my father and I originally started learning Hebrew together with the goal to become a B'nai Mitzvah. Unfortunately, he passed away suddenly and we were unable to complete our studies. As my grandchildren began to undertake their own B'nai Mitzvah studies, it must have been in my subconscious to complete this journey. When a friend suggested that I join the B'nai Mitzvah classes, I jumped at the opportunity. It makes me feel as though I am completing the cycle that my dad was unable to complete. It also makes me feel closer to him, and I think he would have been proud. I don't think it's a coincidence that I am taking up my Jewish studies around the same time in life as my dad became interested. As I said, life is a cycle.
Some moments are meant for celebration, while others invite something deeper, a connection to our past, to those we love, and to the legacy we carry forward. Becoming a B'nei Mitzvah is one of these moments. Today, I feel that connection more acutely as I remember my beloved father who passed away this past December, just 2 months short of his 99th birthday. At just 19 years old, in 1948, my dad was one of the volunteers from South Africa who left the security of his family and his home and his parents and his then girlfriend, my mother, to fight in the Yom HaAtzmaut War of Independence. Growing up, I watched my dad dedicate his life to our family, the tight-knit Jewish community in Cape Town, and to Israel. My father demonstrated that values are not abstract, they are lived. My love for Israel and Jewish traditions was embedded into my soul through my father's service, love, and commitment to Israel, which shaped and instilled in me a deep sense of Zionism and pride. As Douglas Murray says, a culture that forgets its own story forfeits its future. Today, it is my privilege to honor my father's legacy and his very name, Chaim, which means life, and to take my place in this chain of generations. To carry his name, Chaim, is to remember that our story continues and that each of us has the responsibility to keep it alive. L'chaim and Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of You've Always Belonged Here. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. To learn more about Temple Israel, visit our website, tiwestport.org, follow us on Instagram at Temple Israel Westport, or like us on Facebook, Temple Israel of Westport, Connecticut.